My name is Elena. I'm 36 years old, and for 13 years I've been an ICU nurse. I'm the woman people look to when machines are screaming and families are falling apart. I've learned how to keep my voice steady even when my heart is breaking. But nothing prepared me for the moment my own sister stood up at her 1-year-old son's birthday party, 3 weeks after I buried my husband, and announced that her baby was his. The kitchen smelled like vanilla cake and cinnamon candles. Balloons floated lazily near the ceiling. Little Noah was sitting in his high chair, wearing a paper crown that kept slipping over one eye, banging a spoon and laughing like the world was still a safe place. And then my sister Lydia tapped her glass with a fork, smiled that practiced smile of hers, and said the words that changed everything. Most of you know how hard the last few months have been. Losing Marcus, it hit us all. But there's something I need to share. She looked straight at me, her eyes shining with what everyone else probably thought was grief. Noah is Marcus's son. He knew about it. He wanted to take care of him. And as his inheritance, I'll be taking half the house on Maple Ridge Lane, the one worth over $750,000. She held up a folded document with an official-looking stamp. The room went completely silent except for the soft humming of the refrigerator. Every face turned toward me. Aunts, cousins, neighbors waiting for the widow to shatter. I set my untouched slice of cake down on the counter, wiped my hands on a napkin, and said the only thing that felt right in that moment. Oh, I see. That's it. No screaming. No tears in front of them. Just those 3 quiet words. Because what they didn't know, what Lydia could never have imagined, was that my husband, Marcus, had seen this coming long before any of us did. He had prepared something for me from beyond the grave, and in that frozen second I felt the first real flicker of strength since the day the state trooper showed up at my door. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, everyone. If you're here, I already know you appreciate the kind of stories where ordinary women find extraordinary grace when the people closest to them try to break them. Stories about boundaries, about quiet justice, and about choosing peace even when your heart is in pieces. If that resonates with you, take a second to like this video and subscribe. And if you've ever been blindsided by family, drop the word peace in the comments. I read every single one. Let me take you back to the beginning of those 11 days that changed my life forever. Because this didn't start at the birthday party. It started the moment I lost the love of my life. Marcus was 43, a brilliant architect who designed homes that felt like they had souls. We had spent the last 5 years turning a rundown 1940s farmhouse into our dream, wide plank floors we sanded ourselves, a kitchen island we argued over for 3 weekends straight, and a back porch where we drank coffee every Sunday morning watching the sun rise over the fields. That house wasn't just property, it was us. Our laughter, our fights, our promises, paid off completely. No mortgage. Just love poured into every wall. 3 weeks earlier I was standing at his funeral in that same navy dress I would later wear to the birthday party. I held it together for everyone else because that's what I do. I'm the calm one. The one who stays late to comfort a patient's family even after a 12-hour shift. But inside I was hollow. After the service, Marcus's lawyer quietly pressed a plain white envelope into my hand. On the front, in Marcus's familiar neat handwriting, it simply said, "For Elena, when the time comes." I couldn't open it that day, or the next, or even the week after. Grief has a way of making even simple tasks feel impossible. I went back to work almost immediately. The ICU doesn't wait for your heart to heal. There were ventilators to manage, families to update, lives hanging in the balance. For a few blessed hours each shift I could be useful again. At home though, the silence was deafening. His favorite mug still sat by the coffee maker. His drafting table in the sunroom still had half-finished sketches on it. I would catch myself talking to him out loud, asking what color he thought we should paint the guest room, then realizing he would never answer. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon, her voice unusually warm. "Elena, honey, you have to come to little Noah's first birthday party. It would mean the world to Lydia. Family needs to stick together right now." I hesitated. Lydia and I had always had a complicated relationship. She was my younger sister by 4 years, beautiful and chaotic, always in some kind of storm. Her marriage had fallen apart last year, and she'd been living with our mom while trying to get back on her feet. I felt sorry for her. I really did. So I said yes. I even bought Noah a soft stuffed giraffe and a savings bond, because that's what good aunts do. The night before the party, I worked a long shift. When I finally got home, I stared at that white envelope on my kitchen counter for a long time. Something in me still wasn't ready. I left it there and tried to sleep. Looking back now, I realize Marcus had been protecting me in ways I never understood while he was alive. He knew my family dynamics better than I wanted to admit. He knew Lydia's struggles with money, her tendency to bend truth when it suited her, and how my mother would always try to keep the peace by asking the responsible daughter to give more. But on that warm Saturday afternoon in my mother's kitchen, as Lydia stood there holding up that fake will and claiming my husband as the father of her child, I finally understood why he left me that envelope. I didn't break in front of them. I simply finished my glass of water, kissed my nephew on his sticky forehead, and walked out with my head high. In the car, I finally tore open the envelope. Inside was a single index card in Marcus's handwriting. If anyone ever comes for our house, don't argue. Go see Richard. He has everything you'll need. I love you more than yesterday, less than tomorrow. Marcus. That was the moment everything shifted. The quiet widow they expected to crumble wasn't going to play their game. Because my husband, the man who measured everything twice and planned for every possibility, had already built the wall I would need. And over the next 11 days I used it. If you've ever felt like the world was testing how much you could carry while pretending you were fine, you already know how heavy those first days felt. Stay with me, because what happened next, the pressure, the lies, the quiet preparation, and the final truth at that family dinner, is something I wish every woman who's been underestimated could hear. This is my story, and I'm telling it not for sympathy, but because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm. Gather your proof, and let the truth speak for itself. That quiet drive home from my mother's house, after the birthday party, gave me the first real moment of clarity I'd had in weeks. As I gripped the steering wheel, Marcus's index card resting on the passenger seat, I realized I needed to tell you who I was before any of this happened. Because understanding the woman who walked out of that kitchen with her head held high starts with knowing the woman who built a life worth fighting for. My name is Elena, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the steady one. The oldest daughter, the reliable sister, the nurse who shows up even when her own world is collapsing. 36, I'd spent 13 years in the ICU, learning how to deliver bad news gently, how to hold a hand through the worst night of someone's life, and how to keep breathing when everything around me felt like chaos. People often told me I had a gift for staying calm under pressure. What they didn't see was how much that calm sometimes cost me. Marcus and I met 9 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. He was an architect presenting designs for a new children's wing, and I was the nurse who had just finished a brutal double shift but still stayed to help set up tables. He noticed me rearranging flower arrangements because the colors weren't balanced. He laughed and said, "You fix things even when you're exhausted, don't you?" That was the beginning of us. He was 43 when he passed, 4 years older than me, with kind eyes, calloused hands from working on our house, and a mind that noticed every small detail others overlooked. We weren't the couple who had a whirlwind romance. Ours was slow, intentional, and deeply rooted. We dated for 2 years, before getting engaged on the back porch of that fixer-upper farmhouse we just put an offer on. I still remember the way the sunset painted everything golden as he got down on one knee and said, "Elena, I want to build a life with you, not just a house, but a home that holds all our stories." We bought that place for a steal because everyone else thought it was too far gone. But Marcus saw potential where others saw problems. That's how he saw me too, someone strong enough to carry heavy things but soft enough to need protecting sometimes. If you've ever poured your heart into creating Something beautiful with the person you love. You know exactly what that house meant to us. We spent 5 years restoring it on weekends and evenings. I'd come home from night shifts and find him sanding floors at midnight with coffee waiting for me. We argued over paint swatches in the kitchen, danced in the empty living room before the floors were finished, and celebrated every small victory with cheap wine on the porch. That house became our sanctuary, paid off completely 2 years before he died. No debt, just ours. But life with Marcus wasn't only about the house. He was the kind of man who planned for everything. He labeled every tool in the garage, kept meticulous records for every project, and always said, "Preparation isn't paranoia, Elena. It's love in advance." I used to tease him about it. My eyes when he'd organize our important documents into color-coded folders. "Who's ever going to need all this?" I'd ask. He'd just smile and kiss my forehead. You never know. Our life together was quiet in the best way. Sunday mornings with coffee on the porch, planning small weekend getaways, talking about maybe trying for a baby one day when the timing felt right. We never got that chance, but we had something deeper, a partnership built on trust, respect, and the kind of love that doesn't need constant drama to feel real. My family, though, that was always more complicated. My mother raised us mostly on her own after our dad left when I was 12. She worked hard, but she had a soft spot for Lydia, my younger sister. Lydia was always the spark, charismatic, dramatic, the one who could light up a room or burn it down depending on the day. For years younger than me, she bounced from one relationship to another, always chasing something bigger than what she had. When her marriage ended last year and she moved back in with Mom with baby Noah, I tried to be supportive. I sent money when I could, watched Noah so she could job hunt, and told myself that family means showing up even when it's hard. What I didn't fully see then was how my role in the family had been set in stone long ago. Elena the responsible one, Lydia the one who needed saving. Marcus saw it more clearly than I did. He'd gently point out how my mother's calls always seemed to end with some request for me to help Lydia out, while Lydia's problems never seemed to resolve. "You can love them without letting them take pieces of you," he'd say. I wish I had listened more. Looking back from where I sit now, I realize those years before the accident were the foundation. The version of me who walked into that birthday party wasn't just a grieving widow. She was a woman who had spent years learning how to hold everything together, for her patients, for her family, and for the man she loved. But grief has a way of stripping away the armor we wear. It left me raw, exhausted, and for the first time in my life, truly unsure of my place in my own family. That uncertainty didn't last long though, because when Lydia made her move, something inside me, something Marcus had helped strengthen over the years, finally woke up. If you've ever been the strong one in your family, the one everyone leans on while quietly taking advantage of your steadiness, I see you. Type strong one in the comments if that's been your role too. It's lonely work, isn't it? But stay with me, because in the next part of this story, I'll take you through the beautiful, painful details of the home we built and the day I lost the love of my life. The real beginning of how everything unraveled. That house on Maple Ridge Lane wasn't just bricks and wood. It was the physical proof of the life Marcus and I chose to build together. One weekend at a time, one decision at a time. When we first saw it, it was a sad, neglected 1940s farmhouse with peeling paint, sagging floors, and a backyard full of overgrown weeds. Most people drove right past it. But Marcus stood in the dusty living room, sunlight cutting through the broken windows, and whispered, "This is it, Elena. This is where we start our story." We closed on the house 6 months after getting engaged. I still remember signing the papers at the title company, my hand shaking a little from excitement and nerves. Marcus squeezed my fingers under the table and leaned over to say, "We're not just buying a house, we're claiming our future." That moment stayed with me through every late night and every blister we earned restoring it. For 5 years, that house was our shared project and our love language. After long shifts in the ICU, I'd come home to find Marcus already working, wearing an old flannel shirt, sawdust in his hair, and a fresh pot of coffee. waiting on the makeshift plywood counter. We'd spend evenings stripping layers of ugly wallpaper, laughing when a particularly stubborn piece would tear and cover us both in dust. One night, after I'd worked a 16-hour shift, he surprised me by installing the kitchen island we'd argued about for weeks. He'd gotten the exact quartz we both loved and left a note on it that read, "Compromise looks good on us." We sanded every floorboard by hand. I learned how to use a nail gun and he learned how to cook decent meals so I wouldn't live on hospital cafeteria food. We painted the walls a soft sage green in the living room after testing 17 different shades at midnight. Both of us exhausted but happy. The back porch became our favorite place, a wide wooden deck where we'd sit with our feet up, watching fireflies in the summer or drinking hot chocolate wrapped in blankets during winter. That porch held so many quiet conversations about dreams, fears, and the kind of parents we hoped to be one day. Marcus had this gentle way of making even the hardest work feel meaningful. He'd pause while installing cabinets to pull me close and say, "Every nail we drive is another promise I'm keeping." He was meticulous like that, measuring twice, labeling every electrical outlet, keeping a detailed notebook of every renovation expense and decision. I used to tease him that he treated the house like one of his architectural clients. He'd just smile and reply, "Because this one matters more than any of them." There were hard days too, weeks when money was tight and we ate ramen for dinner so we could afford better windows. Moments when we snapped at each other over stupid things like tile choices. But we always found our way back. We'd sit on the half-finished stairs with a bottle of cheap red wine and talk it through. Those moments taught me that real love isn't perfect. It's choosing to stay and keep building even when it's messy. If you've ever restored something old with someone you love, whether it's a house, a relationship, or even yourself, you understand how healing that process can be. Every room in that house carried pieces of us. The reading nook by the big window where Marcus would sketch ideas late at night. The guest room we painted together for future family visits. The master bedroom with the vaulted ceiling we added, where we'd fall asleep talking about nothing and everything. By the time it was finished, the house was valued at over $750,000, completely paid off. But the money never mattered as much as what it represented. It was proof that two people who chose each other could create something lasting. Something solid. Something no one could take away, or so I thought. Marcus used to stand on the front steps some evenings, looking out over the property with this quiet pride. "This is our safe place. Elena," he'd say. "No matter what happens out there, we always come home to this." I didn't fully understand how prophetic those words would become until the accident. That house held our laughter, our tears, our ordinary beautiful days. It was where I felt most like myself. And in the weeks after losing him, walking through those rooms felt both comforting and crushing. His coffee mug still on the counter, his favorite hoodie hanging by the door, the half-read book on his nightstand. Everywhere I looked, he was still there. And yet he wasn't. The weight of that emptiness pressed on me constantly. But it was also what gave me strength when Lydia made her claim. Because that house wasn't just an asset to me. It was the last piece of Marcus I had left. The place where his love still lived in every detail he had carefully planned. If you've ever fought to protect something that holds the memory of someone you lost, you know how deeply personal it becomes. That's exactly where I was when the pressure from my family started building. Stay with me through the next part because I'm going to tell you about the day everything changed forever, the day I lost Marcus, and the beginning of a grief I never expected to survive. The day I lost Marcus started like any other Tuesday. He kissed me goodbye in the kitchen while I was still in my scrubs from the night shift, his hand lingering on my lower back the way it always did. "Drive safe on your way home," I told him, smiling as he grabbed his keys. "I love you more than yesterday," he finished, the familiar line with a grin, "less than tomorrow," and walked out the door. That was the last time I saw him alive. He was on his way back from meeting a client when it happened. A delivery truck crossed the center line on a winding country road not far from our house. The state trooper who showed up at my door later said Marcus probably didn't see it coming. One moment he was driving home to me, the next everything stopped. I was just getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. I opened it still wearing my robe, expecting a package. Instead, there were two officers with grave faces and hats in their hands. "Ma'am, are you Elena Harper?" one of them asked. The world narrowed to a single point. I remember nodding. The way my bare feet felt cold on the hardwood floor, Marcus had sanded himself. They told me the details gently, but words like impact and instant didn't fully register. All I could think was that he never made it home for the dinner I'd planned to make. The house, which had felt so full of him just hours earlier, suddenly felt like a museum of everything we'd never do again. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I thanked the officers, closed the door, and sat down at the kitchen table where we'd shared so many meals. The silence was unbearable. His coffee mug from that morning was still in the sink. I stared at it for what felt like hours, tracing the chip on the handle with my eyes. That's when the weight of it truly hit me. Not just that he was gone, but that I had to keep living in the home we built without him in it. The next few days blurred together. My mother came immediately, along with a few close friends from the hospital. I handled the arrangements the way I handle codes in the ICU, methodically, calmly, making sure everyone else was okay, while my own chest felt like it was caving in. The funeral was small but beautiful, held at the little church near our house. I wore the navy dress that would later become my armor at the birthday party. I stood at the front greeting people, thanking them for coming, refilling coffee in the basement like it was just another long shift. Inside I was screaming. Marcus's lawyer, Richard, approached me quietly after the service. He pressed that plain white envelope into my hand and said, "Marcus left specific instructions. Open it only when you need it most." I slipped it into my purse without looking. I wasn't ready to hear his voice on paper. Not yet. Going back to work after 3 days felt both necessary and impossible. The ICU waited for no one. I walked in, put on my badge, and for 12 hours I was Nurse Harper again, the one who could intubate, comfort, and make impossible decisions. But every time I drove home along that same road where he had his accident, the grief would crash over me like a wave. I'd pull into our driveway, see the lights I'd forgotten to turn off, and sit in the car until I could breathe again. Nights were the hardest. I'd wander through the house, touching things that still carried his warmth, the throw blanket on the couch, where he'd fall asleep watching documentaries, the drafting table still covered in sketches for a new project he'd never finish. I talked to him sometimes, whispering questions into the empty rooms. What color should we paint the trim now? Or, did I remember to lock the back door? The house that once felt like our greatest achievement now echoed with absence. If you've ever lost someone who was your safe place, you know that grief doesn't follow a schedule. It sneaks up in the middle of folding laundry or while making coffee for one. Some mornings I'd wake up reaching for him, only to remember all over again. The pain was sharp, but underneath it was something quieter, a growing resolve. Marcus had always protected me in small ways. That envelope felt like one more promise he was keeping. My family tried to be there, but even in those early days, the cracks were showing. My mother kept saying, "Lydia's having such a hard time too. Maybe this will bring you two closer." I didn't have the energy to unpack what that really meant. I just nodded and kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other. That house on Maple Ridge became both my comfort and my battleground. Every room reminded me why I would never let anyone take it from me. It held Marcus's dreams, our shared history, and now my future without him. I didn't know yet that my own sister would try to claim half of it. But some part of me deep down sensed that trouble was coming. Stay with me. In the next part I'll share how those first subtle fractures in my family turned into something much more calculated, and how I began to see the setup that was quietly unfolding around me. Even in the haze of those first weeks after losing Marcus, I started noticing the subtle shifts in my family. Grief has a way of revealing what was already there, hidden under layers of routine and obligation. What I saw wasn't outright betrayal yet. Just the familiar pattern that had always existed, now sharpened by my vulnerability. My mother had always been the peacemaker, but her version of peace usually meant asking me to bend so Lydia could stand straight. She called almost every day, her voice soft with concern that somehow always circled back to my sister. Elena, Lydia's really struggling with Noah. The baby keeps asking for his daddy, and she's got all that debt from the divorce. You know how it is. I would listen, exhausted from my shift, and offer what I could, a grocery delivery here. Watching Noah for a few hours there, I told myself it was what family does. Marcus used to gently challenge that. You're allowed to carry your own grief first, he'd say. I wish I had taken those words deeper to heart. Lydia was 4 years younger and had always been the magnetic one, quick with a smile, dramatic with her stories, and somehow always in the middle of a crisis. Her marriage to her ex had been turbulent, ending in a messy split right before Noah was born. She moved back in with Mom, and for a while I genuinely felt for her. I'd bring over meals, play with my nephew on the floor of Mom's living room, and try to encourage her to find stable work. Noah was a sweet, chubby 1-year-old with Marcus's dark hair, or at least that's what people started saying later. At the time I just saw my nephew and felt protective. But there were small comments that lingered. Lydia would casually mention how hard it was raising a child alone, how unfair life had been, and how some people had everything while others scraped by. She'd glance at me when she said it. I brushed it off as grief talking for both of us. My mother would nod along, saying things like, "We all have to help each other now that Marcus is gone. Family sticks together." The word family started to feel like a quiet demand rather than a comfort. One evening, about 10 days after the funeral, I stopped by Mom's house to drop off some of Marcus's baby clothes we'd kept hoping for the future. Lydia was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low. I caught fragments. "The house is paid off, yeah. Over $750 easy, we just need the right moment." She hung up quickly when she saw me, flashing that bright smile. "Just talking to a friend about support groups," she said. Something felt off, but I was too drained to dig deeper. I hugged Noah, handed over the clothes, and went home to my quiet house. If you've ever been the reliable one in a family where love feels conditional on what you can provide, you know how heavy that role becomes. I started questioning myself. Was I being selfish for wanting space to grieve? Should I be doing more for Lydia and Noah? Those doubts kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling in the bedroom Marcus and I had painted together. Marcus had seen these dynamics clearly. He never pushed me to cut ties, but he created boundaries I didn't fully appreciate until later. He'd say, "Love them, Elena, but don't let their chaos become your responsibility." That white envelope from his lawyer felt like one more boundary he was trying to set for me from the other side. By the time my mother called about Noah's first birthday party, the undercurrent was stronger. Her voice carried that extra sweetness she used when she needed me to agree. I said yes because Noah deserved to have his aunt there, and because refusing would have started a conversation I didn't have the strength for. I had no idea I was walking into a carefully staged moment. Those early cracks, the phone calls, the comments, the subtle pressure were the setup. Lydia wasn't acting out of pure desperation. There was calculation behind it, fueled by her financial troubles and a belief that I would eventually cave because that's what I'd always done. The responsible sister, the calm one, the giver. But something had shifted in me after losing Marcus. The grief stripped away the need to please everyone. For the first time I was ready to protect what was mine, our home, his memory, and the peace he wanted for me. If you've ever sensed your family testing your boundaries while you're at your weakest, type boundaries in the comments. You're not alone in that quiet battle. The party was supposed to be a celebration for Noah. Instead, it became the moment everything came to a head. In the next part, I'll take you there, into that warm kitchen filled with cake and betrayal, where my sister made her bold claim and I said the 3 words that started my silent fight back. The morning of Noah's first birthday party, I woke up with that familiar heaviness in my chest. I hadn't slept well, but I still got up, made coffee in Marcus's favorite mug, and chose the same navy dress I'd worn to his funeral. It felt right somehow, like carrying a piece of armor made from memory. I tucked the unopened white envelope into my purse more out of habit than intention, and drove the 15 minutes to my mother's house. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and approaching rain. I told myself it was just a family gathering, a chance to celebrate my nephew. My mother's kitchen was warm and chaotic in the best way, or at least it seemed that way at first. Balloons in soft blues and yellows bobbed against the ceiling. A sheet cake with a bright red truck on top sat on the counter, and Noah was in his high chair wearing a tiny paper crown, giggling as he smashed a spoon into his tray. Relatives and neighbors filled the space. Aunt Carla, a few cousins, Lydia's old coworker. Everyone offered me those gentle, tilted head smiles reserved for new widows. I accepted them quietly, helping slice cake and refill drinks like the reliable Elena they all expected. Lydia looked polished that day. Her hair was styled, makeup flawless, and she hovered around Noah with dramatic affection. "Look at Mommy's big boy," she'd say loud enough for everyone to hear. Travis, her on-again boyfriend who had been part of the messy divorce drama, lingered nearby, refilling her glass and giving me nods that felt too familiar. Something in the air felt staged, but grief had dulled my instincts. I held Noah for a few minutes, breathing in his baby smell, feeling that old ache for the family Marcus and I never got to complete. I pushed it down and smiled for the photos. Then my mother tapped a knife against her wine glass. "Everyone. Lydia has something special she wants to share with the family." The room quieted. Lydia stood slowly, smoothing her dress, and looked directly at me with eyes that held more triumph than sorrow. "These past months have been so hard," she began, her voice catching perfectly on cue. "Losing Marcus hit me deeper than anyone knows, because Noah is Marcus's son." The words landed like a stone in still water. Gasps rippled through the kitchen. He knew about the pregnancy before the accident. He wanted to take care of us. And as his inheritance, I'll be claiming half the house on Maple Ridge. The one you two built. It's only fair. She held up the folded paper, waving it so the official stamp caught the light. "Here's his will. It's all there in writing." The room turned to me in unison. Forks paused midair. Eyes widened. I felt the collective breath hold, waiting for the breakdown, the screaming widow, the emotional explosion that would make them all feel justified in their pity. Instead, I set my plate down carefully, wiped my fingers on a napkin, and met her gaze. "Oh, I see." My voice was calm, almost gentle. "No tears, no accusations." Just those 3 small words. I crossed to Noah, kissed his sticky cheek, and whispered, "Happy birthday, sweet boy." Then I picked up my purse and walked out the front door into the cool afternoon air. Behind me, the kitchen erupted into whispers, but I didn't look back. In the car, with my hands perfectly steady on the wheel, I finally tore open Marcus's envelope. The single index card inside carried his neat handwriting. "If anyone ever comes for our house, don't argue with them. Go see Richard. He has everything you'll need. I love you, Marcus." Tears came then, but they were quiet and private. Not the kind that break you in front of an audience. In that moment, sitting in my driveway later, I understood that my husband had been protecting me long before he left. He knew my family's patterns. He knew Lydia's struggles and my tendency to give until it hurt. And he had prepared. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted while you were already carrying unbearable grief, you know how disorienting that moment feels. But there's also a strange clarity that follows. I drove home to our house on Maple Ridge, the one we built with love, and felt something shift inside me. The passive, exhausted widow was fading. The nurse who runs toward emergencies was waking up. That night the messages started. My mother first. "Elena, you can't just walk out like that. Family doesn't do that." Then Lydia. "I didn't want it to be this way, but Noah deserves his father's legacy." Even Aunt Carla chimed in about doing the right thing for the baby. Each text carried that familiar guilt. For the baby. Family. Marcus would have wanted. I didn't reply right away. I sat at our kitchen table, the same one where Marcus and I planned every renovation, and made my first quiet decision. I wouldn't argue in the heat of emotion. I would prepare. The birthday party wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush. Lydia had timed it perfectly, 3 weeks after the funeral, when grief was still raw and I was expected to be too broken to fight back. What she didn't count on was that Marcus had already thought several steps ahead. If you've ever had family use a child as emotional leverage against you, type leverage in the comments. It's a heavy weight to carry, isn't it? But this was only the beginning of their pressure campaign. In the next part, I'll tell you how the messages turned into visits, how the lie spread online, and how I began collecting the pieces that would eventually dismantle their story. The days after the birthday party blurred into a quiet storm of messages, calls, and unexpected visits. Lydia and my mother didn't waste time. They knew I was grieving, exhausted, and they used every emotional lever they had. What started as gentle suggestions quickly turned into a coordinated effort to wear me down. My phone buzzed constantly. My mother's text came first, always wrapped in concern. "Elena, honey, walking out like that hurt Lydia deeply. She's a single mom trying to do right by her son. Marcus would want you to help." Then Lydia followed with longer messages about how hard it was raising Noah alone, how the house represented stability for her child, and how family shares burdens. She even sent photos of Noah looking up with big innocent eyes. The guilt was carefully crafted. "For the baby," she'd repeat, knowing it was hard for me to push back against that. 2 days after the party, Lydia showed up at my door with Travis waiting in the car. She stood on the porch holding a manila folder, her expression soft and rehearsed. "I don't want this to get ugly, sis. We're blood. I had a lawyer draw up a simple transfer agreement. You sign, we sell the house, split it fairly, and everyone moves on. No court, no drama." I leaned against the doorframe, studying her. She knew details about the estate that only someone digging would know. When I asked how she knew probate was still open, she brushed it off too quickly. "Everyone knows these things take time." I took the folder, not because I was considering it, but because I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. Inside was a transfer document and a photocopy of the will she'd waved at the party. Even at first glance I spotted problems. The bank named for escrow was 1 week closed years ago. The address listed for Marcus was wrong. And the witness signature? Travis Boone, her boyfriend. The loops in Marcus's supposed signature looked traced, careful in a way that didn't match the man who signed 1,000 documents beside me. That night, I photographed every page under good lighting. I noted every inconsistency the way I chart a patient's vitals. No celebration, no anger, just documentation. I placed the folder in a drawer next to Marcus's index card and wrote on my notepad, "Call Richard tomorrow at 8 a.m. If you've ever had family pressure you while pretending it's love, you know how isolating it feels." The messages kept coming. Aunt Carla saying pride shouldn't stand in the way of doing right by Marcus's son. Cousins sharing Lydia's social media posts about some people hiding a dead man's wishes. She'd posted vague but pointed stories about greedy widows and innocent babies, collecting sympathy likes and comments. The noise was building, designed to make me look cold if I stayed silent. I stayed silent anyway. I went to work, cared for my patients, came home to our house, and let the quiet do its work. Grief was still there, heavy in my chest, but underneath it grew something sharper: focus. The same focus I use when a patient codes and everyone else panics. Slow, methodical, certain. Marcus had taught me that preparation beats reaction, so I started small. I reviewed our joint documents. I noted timelines. I remembered conversations we'd had about family dynamics. He'd once said, half joking, "If anything ever happens to me, don't let them guilt you into giving away what we built together." I hadn't thought much of it then. Now it echoed. By day 5, the pressure intensified. My mother asked me to come over, just us. She cried real tears at her kitchen sink, saying Lydia had nothing. No stability, mounting credit card debt, and a baby who deserved better. "Just give her something, Elena. For the baby." That phrase landed heavier each time. She painted pictures of them living in a car, of me sleeping peacefully in our big paid-off house while my sister suffered. For one long moment I held her while she shook, feeling the pull of love and responsibility. But over her shoulder, I reminded myself, Loving someone doesn't mean enabling their lies. Helping a child doesn't mean surrendering to a forged will. I left without promising anything. On the way to my car, Lydia texted again. Filing with the court Monday. Sunday dinner is your last chance to be reasonable. That was when I made my decision. I wouldn't hide. I wouldn't let them control the narrative. I called Richard, Marcus's lawyer, and asked him to join me at the family dinner. Then I looked at the still-sealed cream envelope. Marcus had left inside the folder the one Richard said not to open until the timing was right. I touched it gently but left it closed. Patience was my strategy now. Lydia was smart. She wasn't some cartoon villain. She was desperate, calculated, and knew exactly how to use family guilt, a cute baby, and public opinion as weapons. Travis was helping her behind the scenes. My mother was caught between protecting both daughters and choosing the path of least resistance. They thought my silence meant weakness. They were wrong. If you've ever been painted as the villain for simply protecting your peace, you understand how disorienting that is. But quiet strength is powerful. It gives you time to gather truth while others exhaust themselves with noise. The pressure campaign was reaching its peak. They believed I was cracking. Instead, I was preparing for the final stand. In the next part, I'll tell you about my meeting with Richard. The thick folder Marcus had prepared long before his death, and the undeniable medical truth that would change everything at that Sunday dinner. The week after Lydia's ambush at the birthday party became a masterclass in quiet preparation. While the texts and calls kept flooding in, I moved through my days like I do in the ICU during a slow code, deliberate, focused, and completely in control of what I could touch. I didn't yell. I didn't post offensive replies online. I simply gathered facts the way I chart patient notes, one clear entry at a time. Each evening after my shift, I sat at the kitchen table where Marcus and I used to review house plans. I spread out the folder Lydia had given me and studied it under the warm light of the pendant lamp he installed. The more I looked, the more the forgery revealed itself. The signature on the will had the right general shape but lacked the confident slant Marcus always used when signing important papers. The escrow bank hadn't existed in our lives for over 4 years. Even the notary stamp looked slightly off when I compared it to real documents from our mortgage days. Travis's printed name under the witness line felt like the biggest red flag of all. Man who had barely spoken to Marcus in years, suddenly witnessing his final wishes. I photographed everything again, backed up the files to a secure drive, and started a simple timeline on a fresh notebook. Date of Marcus's accident. Date Noah was conceived based on his birthday. Lydia's financial troubles. The timing of her sudden revelation. The pieces didn't fit, but I refused to jump to conclusions. Instead, I let the evidence build itself. During the day, I returned to work with a new kind of steadiness. Patients in critical condition don't care about family drama. I found comfort in that, the beeping monitors, the rhythm of rounds, the small victories when someone stabilized. On breaks, I'd step outside and call Richard's office to schedule an appointment. His receptionist said he'd been expecting my call. That alone sent a chill through me. Marcus had truly planned for this. If you've ever faced pressure from people who should support you and chose silence as your first response, you know how powerful that choice can be. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It gives the noise time to expose itself, while you build something unbreakable underneath. Type silence in the comments if you've ever won by staying quiet when everyone expected you to explode. By day 7, I had compiled my own small folder. Photos of inconsistencies, copies of our real joint ownership papers, and notes from every conversation with my mother and Lydia. I also started noticing more red flags in their behavior. Lydia's social media posts grew more emotional, tagging distant relatives and painting me as the heartless sister who refused to help her late husband's child. Travis texted me once, trying to play the reasonable guy. "Let's make this clean for everyone, Elena. Sign the papers and we can all move forward." I screenshotted it without replying and sent it to myself with the timestamp. The house on Maple Ridge felt different during those days. Instead of just grief, it held purpose. I'd walk through the rooms, touching the details Marcus had poured himself into, the perfectly level shelves in the sunroom, the custom light fixtures in the hallway, and feel him beside me. He had measured everything twice in life. Now I was doing the same with the truth. My mother called again on Friday, her voice thick with tears. She didn't mention the will directly this time. She just talked about how scared she was for Lydia and Noah, how they might end up with nothing. I listened, then said softly, "Mom, I'm bringing Marcus's lawyer to Sunday dinner. This needs to be handled properly." The line went quiet. She tried one last time to appeal to family, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping in. They had expected me to fold by now. My calm refusal was throwing them off balance. That Saturday night, I laid out my navy dress again and prepared the folders I would bring. One for me, one back up in the car. I looked at the still sealed cream envelope from Marcus's lawyer folder. The one Richard had warned me not to open until the moment truly demanded it. I ran my finger across his handwriting on the outside and whispered, "Thank you for seeing this coming." I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. The woman who once gave endlessly to keep the peace was gone. In her place was someone who understood that protecting what Marcus and I built wasn't selfish, it was necessary. For me, for his memory, and yes, even for Noah, who deserved better than being used as a pawn. If you've ever had to prepare in silence, while others tried to rewrite your story, you know the quiet power that comes with it. I slept better that night than I had since the funeral. Because I finally understood, I wasn't fighting alone. The pressure campaign had failed to break me. Now it was time for the truth to speak. In the next part, I'll take you to my meeting with Richard, where I finally opened the folder Marcus had prepared 14 months earlier, and discovered the medical revelation that made everything click into place. Wednesday morning came faster than I expected. I drove downtown in my scrubs, the thick folder from home resting on the passenger seat next to Marcus's index card. Richard Howard's office was in an old brick building above a bakery, the kind of place that smelled like fresh bread and quiet competence. The elevator was slow, giving me time to steady my breathing. When I stepped into the waiting room, Richard was already there, a kind-eyed man in his late 50s with reading glasses perched on his forehead. He greeted me like he had been waiting for this exact moment. "Elena," he said warmly, shaking my hand, "Marcus told me you might come in when things got difficult. He hoped you never would, but he prepared just in case." We sat in his office with good coffee between us. I placed Marcus's index card on the desk. Richard read it silently and nodded, then opened a locked drawer and pulled out a thick, sealed folder with my name written across the front in Marcus's unmistakable handwriting. My throat tightened at the sight of it. "Marcus came to me about 14 months ago," Richard explained. "He said he didn't want to worry you, but he wanted to make sure you were protected. If anyone ever tried to challenge the house or the estate." He was very specific about the process. He laid the documents out one by one. First Marcus's real, updated will, properly drafted, signed, witnessed, and already filed with the court. It named me as the sole beneficiary. Everything, the house savings, even his architectural tools, passed directly to me. No provisions for anyone else. This was the only will on record. Next came the deed to our house, free and clear. Both our names but with clear survivorship rights. Then a notarized statement Marcus had signed, affirming we had no children together and that no third party had any claim on the estate. Each piece felt like another layer of the wall Marcus had quietly built around the life we shared. At the bottom of the stack was a smaller, cream-colored sealed envelope with my name on it in his handwriting. "For Elena, when needed." I reached for it instinctively. Richard gently stopped me. He asked me to tell you not to open this one until the timing feels absolutely right. He said you would know when that moment arrives. I held that envelope in my lap like it was fragile glass. It weighed almost nothing, yet it carried the weight of Marcus's love and foresight. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly held, like he was still standing behind me, steadying my shoulders the way he used to when I came home from hard shifts. We talked for nearly an hour. I showed Richard the forged documents Lydia had given me. He examined them carefully, noting the same inconsistencies I had spotted: the outdated bank, the wrong address, Travis's name as witness. If she tries to file this, he said calmly, she'll be submitting a forged will. That's a serious felony. But we won't jump there yet. Your silence and preparation are your strongest moves right now. Before I left, Richard made copies of everything and handed me a clean set organized in a new folder. Bring this to Sunday dinner if you decide to go. Let the documents speak first. And Elena, Marcus was proud of the woman you are. He wanted you to keep being her, even without him. I drove home with the cream envelope propped against the salt shaker on the kitchen table, exactly where I could see it every time I walked past. I didn't open it, as tempting as it was during those long evenings, when my mother's messages kept coming and the weight of grief pressed down. I respected Marcus's instruction. The timing would matter. I had learned that from years of nursing. Doing the right thing at the right moment can mean the difference between healing and disaster. That folder became my anchor. Every night I reviewed the real will, the deed, the medical history summaries Richard had included. Marcus had thought of nearly everything. The more I studied it, the calmer I became. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, about protecting what we had built together, and refusing to let grief make me small. If you've ever received a final gift from someone you lost that showed how deeply they understood you, you know how healing and heartbreaking it feels at the same time. Marcus didn't just leave me property. He left me proof that I was never alone in this fight. The red flags from Lydia's documents and Travis's clumsy texts were piling up, but the biggest revelation was still waiting. Inside that sealed cream envelope, a medical truth that would silence every lie at the family dinner. Stay with me. In the next part I'll share exactly what that envelope contained and how the pieces of the timeline finally locked together in a way no one could argue with. Sunday morning arrived with soft light filtering through the kitchen windows. Marcus had replaced himself. 2 hours before I had to leave for the family dinner, I sat at the table with a fresh cup of coffee and finally picked up the cream-colored envelope. My hands, steady through countless emergencies in the ICU, trembled just slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a short note in Marcus's familiar handwriting and a folded medical document on official letterhead. The note read, Elena, if you're reading this, someone is claiming I fathered their child. I'm not. I never wanted you to carry the burden of knowing this while we were still hoping for our own future. But I kept the proof because truth matters more than stories. I love you. Don't argue, just show them this. Marcus. Underneath the note was the medical record. In the spring of 2022, Marcus had been in a serious hiking accident during a solo trip I couldn't join because of work. He'd suffered a severe pelvic injury that required emergency surgery. The documents detailed the procedure and included follow-up lab results from 8 weeks later confirming permanent infertility, 0 sperm count, medically documented and signed by a specialist. The dates were crystal clear. I sat there alone in our quiet kitchen and did something I hadn't done since the funeral. I laughed. One short, breathless sound that turned into tears. Of course he had. The man who labeled every box in the garage and kept carbon copies of receipts had quietly safeguarded our life together even in his most private pain. He never told me the full extent of the long-term consequences because he didn't want me to grieve a future we might never have. He just prepared. The timeline locked together perfectly in my mind. The way a patient's chart suddenly makes sense during rounds. Marcus's accident and procedure. Spring 2022. Confirmed sterile by summer 2022. Noah, my nephew, born in early 2025, meaning conception around spring 2024. Nearly 2 full years later. This wasn't speculation or he said she said. This was dated, signed medical evidence from a doctor who had no reason to lie. I didn't feel triumph. I felt seen, held, like Marcus had reached across time and lost to stand beside me one more time. I cried for the children we would never have together. I cried for the quiet way he protected me. And then the nurse in me took over. I laid everything out on the table and built an airtight timeline with clear dates. Drove to the 24-hour copy shop and made multiple sets of the full package. The real will, the deed, Marcus's notarized statement, the medical records, and screenshots of Travis's texts admitting he handled the witness part. I sent a photo of the medical letterhead to Richard. He called back within minutes, his voice carrying rare excitement. Elena, this ends it. The dates are irrefutable. A documented medical condition 2 years before any possible conception. Bring everything tonight. Let the facts do the talking. If you've ever received undeniable proof that someone loved you enough to protect you even after they're gone, you understand the mix of gratitude and heartbreak that washes over you. Doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you solid ground to stand on when everything else feels like quicksand. Type protect it in the comments if you've ever felt that kind of quiet love from someone who's no longer here. That afternoon, Travis sent one last text trying to play peacemaker. Just sign tonight so we can all move on. I already handled the witness stuff on the will, so it's solid. I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Richard. With the note, he just admitted forgery in writing, and replied to Travis with something neutral to keep him calm. Another piece of evidence freely given. I wasn't going to the dinner to destroy anyone. I was going to end the lies cleanly, and I made one more decision that morning while staring at Marcus's note. Noah was still my nephew. He had done nothing wrong. Whatever happened with Lydia, I would set up a college fund for him on my own terms, controlled by me, untouched by his mother's choices, not because I was forced, but because kindness and truth could exist together. I folded the documents carefully, placed Marcus's note in my purse for strength, and looked around our home one last time before leaving. The grief was still there, but it no longer felt like it would swallow me. I was ready. The pressure, the forgeries, the emotional manipulation, all of it was about to meet the one thing they couldn't spin or shout over: cold, documented truth. In the next part, I'll take you into that final Sunday dinner at my mother's house, where everything came to a head in front of the whole family. The drive to my mother's house that Sunday evening felt different. The same 15-minute route I'd taken so many times now carried the weight of finality. I wasn't going to argue or defend myself. I was going to let the truth speak. Richard met me in the driveway, his slim briefcase in hand and a calm presence that immediately steadied me. Ready? He asked. I nodded. Let the documents do the work. The house was full again, almost the same crowd as the birthday party. The smell of roast beef and potatoes filled the air. Warm and deceptively ordinary. Noah was asleep in the back room. Lydia sat at the head of the table, dressed confidently, her expression a mix of anticipation and nerves. Travis stood by the window with a beer. My mother hovered, avoiding my eyes. When I walked in with Richard behind me, the room shifted. Lydia stood immediately. I'm glad you came, Elena. I hoped you'd be reasonable. Noah is Marcus's son. As his inheritance, I'll be taking half the house. We can do this the easy way tonight or the hard way in court tomorrow. Her voice carried that practiced certainty. The relatives leaned in, the same way they had at the party. My mother whispered, just give her something for the baby, Elena. The guilt lever again. I sat down slowly, folded my hands and said gently, sit down, Lydia. Let's talk about Marcus's real will. I placed my folder on the table and slid the first document toward the center. Marcus's actual will, dated, signed, witnessed and filed. Richard spoke in his measured lawyer's voice. This is the only will of Marcus Harper on record with the court. It leaves everything to Elena. Sole beneficiari. Lydia's face tightened. She quickly pulled out her forged copy and slapped it down. This is his will. It clearly states his wishes for Noah. I didn't raise my voice. I pointed calmly. This names a bank we closed 4 years ago. This lists an apartment address we never had. And this witness signature, Travis Boone. I looked at him. The man who just texted me that he handled the witness part. Travis went pale. The room grew deathly quiet. Richard added softly, submitting a forged will to probate is a felony. Forgery carries serious consequences for everyone involved. The tide turned visibly. Relatives pulled back. My mother sank into her chair. But Lydia doubled down, her voice rising. None of that matters. Noah is still his son. Marcus loved him. You can't just deny that. That was the opening I needed. I took out the final set of papers, the medical records, and laid them in the center of the table for everyone to see. This is from Marcus's urologist, I said, my voice steady and clear. The same tone I use when explaining a diagnosis to a patient's family. Spring 2022 emergency surgery after a severe injury. Follow-up labs 8 weeks later confirming permanent infertility. 0 sperm count. Documented. Signed. I let the dates speak. Noah was conceived in spring 2024. 2 full years later. Marcus could not have been the father. He kept this proof for me because he knew someone might try to rewrite our story. The silence was absolute. Lydia snatched at the papers, her hands shaking. That's fake. You're lying. But her voice cracked. The performance was unraveling in real time. She stood so fast her chair toppled behind her. You've always thought you were better than me. Perfect Elena with her perfect house and perfect life. I remained still. The contrast between her outburst and my calm made everything clearer. I placed Travis's screenshot on the table last. He admitted it himself. Richard spoke once more, quietly summarizing the legal reality for the room. Forgery, false claims, potential criminal charges. No drama in his tone, just facts. Aunt Carla stepped away from Lydia. Cousins stared at the medical dates, doing the simple math. Travis slipped out the back door without a word. My mother looked shattered, her hands covering her face. I looked at Lydia, who was now crying real tears, mascara running. I'm not going to the police, I said to the whole room. Not if this ends here tonight. No filing the forged will. No more posts. No more pressure. You sign a statement dropping all claims and write me a sincere apology. And Noah, he's still my nephew. I will set up a college fund for him, controlled by me, because he deserves a chance, not because of any lie. Lydia stared at me, broken. For the first time she had nothing left to say. If you've ever had to stand calm while your world was being challenged by the people closest to you, you know how powerful that moment feels. Not victorious but clear. Truth had finally cut through the noise. The dinner that was meant to force my surrender became the place where the lies ended. The silence that followed my words at the dinner table felt heavier than any noise Lydia had made. No one reached for the roast that had gone cold. My mother sat gray-faced, staring at the medical papers like they had rewritten her entire understanding of the last few months. Lydia slowly righted her fallen chair and sank into it, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs that no longer carried performance. For the first time in years, the room held nothing but raw truth. Richard stayed calm and professional, guiding the rest of the conversation with the precision of a surgeon. He had prepared a simple statement on his laptop. Lydia read it through tears, then signed it in front of everyone, acknowledging that the will she presented was invalid, that she had no claim on the house or estate, and that she would cease all public statements about Marcus being Noah's father. I asked for one additional line in her own handwriting, a short apology. She wrote it. I folded it and placed it in my purse next to Marcus's note. Not for revenge but for closure. I turned to my mother last. I love you, Mom, but I won't let love mean I have to accept lies. The house stays with me. That's where Marcus and I built our life. That's final. She nodded slowly, too exhausted to argue anymore. The family began to leave one by one, offering awkward goodbyes. The warmth of the house had vanished, replaced by a sober stillness. In the weeks that followed, the estate closed cleanly, just as Marcus had arranged. The house on Maple Ridge Lane remained mine, free, clear and filled with the echoes of the love we shared. I didn't change much at first. His coffee mug still sits by the sink. His drafting table is still in the sunroom. Some nights I sit on the back porch where we used to watch the sunset and talk to him quietly. The grief hasn't disappeared, but it has softened into something gentler, something I can carry without it breaking me. True to my word, I opened a college fund for Noah the following month. It's in my name only, with automatic deposits from each paycheck. Lydia doesn't have access, and I don't send updates or make a show of it. One day, when he's older and ready to understand, He'll have a clean start that isn't tainted by the worst decisions his mother made. He's still my nephew. That part was never a lie. Lydia and I have very limited contact now. She signed the papers, deleted the social media posts, and has stayed quiet. Travis disappeared from the family circle completely. My mother and I are careful with each other these days. Our conversations are shorter, more honest. The sweetness she once used to manipulate is gone, replaced by a fragile respect. She has never fully apologized, and I've stopped waiting for it. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt, they just need to stop being walked over. If you've ever had to choose truth over toxic family peace, you know how liberating and lonely that choice can be. But on the other side of it, there's a quiet strength you didn't know you possessed. Learned that protecting my peace wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Marcus taught me that long before he left. He showed me that real love plans ahead, stays silent when it needs to, and leaves proof instead of promises. I still work my shifts in the ICU. The hospital doesn't care about my personal storms, and I'm grateful for that. For 12 hours at a time, I can be the calm in someone else's chaos. And when I drive home along that familiar road, past the spot of the accident, I no longer feel only emptiness. I feel gratitude for the years we had, for the home we built, and for the way Marcus made sure I would never have to fight alone. Some evenings I take out the folder he prepared and read his final note again. Proof beats a story every time. I love you. He was right. In the end, it wasn't anger or loud confrontation that won. It was preparation, patience, and the quiet decision to stand in my truth. To every woman listening who has been underestimated, guilt-tripped, or asked to shrink herself for family, hear this. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to stay calm when they expect you to break. And you are allowed to choose healing on your own terms. If this story touched something deep inside you, drop the word strength in the comments. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with family, let me know. Your stories matter here. Thank you for sitting with me through all 11 days of this journey. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more real, heartfelt stories coming. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and remember, the people who truly love you will leave you proof, not problems.